You're on Channel 31. It is the Soccer Show. Not far away from the end of the season. A big one at the weekend, the Diabetes Australia Dockerty Cup final. Don't worry about that. Huge crowd at Olympic Park. Very special. The highlights of that one and lots more. Guest panellist on tonight as well. We look forward to speaking to him. We've got a guest in the studio. Don't forget the Aqua Certosa competition. That's a little bit special. We'll be back in just a moment to tell you all about that and all the other wonderful various things that we've got in store for you over the next hour. Stay with us, won't you? Welcome back. Gosh, I'm as happy as I can be because we've still got a couple of weeks to run on Channel 31. Hasn't it been good fun, folks? Yes, it has. Highlights tonight of the Diabetes Australia Dockerty Cup final, the oldest domestic competition in Australia. And of course, next week, State of Origin football comes to the Soccer Show. More about that a little bit later. But first of all, let's talk to the voice of authority who sits by my side, able-bodied, every week. Paulie Williams, good evening. How are you?
Very well, and you?
Just as fine as I could be, and you look resplendent in your newly laundered jacket. Paulie?
Thank you very much.
And we've got a special guest panellist, Paul?
We have Frank McGrellis is our special guest panellist. Welcome to the show, Frank. Your first appearance on the Soccer Show, though you've helped us out in the commentary box from time to time.
First appearance, Paul, Greg, thanks for having us here.
And a happy haggis to you. Got to talk about the Diabetes Australia Dockerty Cup final, which was played at the weekend, and is this a gauge for the season to come for the two clubs involved without giving away the result? Frank, the Melbourne Knights and South Melbourne.
Yeah, I think it's got a big part to play how the league's going to start next week, Greg, and I think both sides will be looking to get a result in this game.
Well, the two sides, of course, are playing each other next week in the first round of the new A-League.
The A-League.
The A-League. It's going to take a bit of a time getting used to that new name, but there was a great game on the weekend, and we'll look forward to those highlights in just a moment. But there was some other news during the week as well. Just quickly looking at the domestic Victorian scene, the Premier League clubs voted 12-1 for summer soccer starting in June of 1996. So if that vote has continued to carry through the board of commissioners, through the Victorian Soccer Federation, we're in for summer soccer for the Premier League next season. OK, let's go back, as we said, Diabetes Australia Dockerty Cup, 100 and something years old. I have no idea, actually, at this point. I'll check it up. But during the week, of course, was the two semi-finals played at Olympic Park, and I think we'll look at a few highlights of those two games. In the first semi-final, the Melbourne Knights took on the Melbourne Zebras in a lacklustre first 45 minutes, which saw both sides creating little chances in front of the goal. The Melbourne Zebras, when they did manage to get forward, had some promising moves, especially down the right-hand side. But in front of goal, the finishing was equally as tame. But for the Melbourne Knights, it was always players like Mark Silic and Ollie Pondoyak who were going to be the difference between the two sides. Silic here put Pondoyak through with only the goalkeeper to beat. Paul Della Rocca used his face to stop the first attempt, but in the end Pondoyak blasted over, injuring his foot at the same time. The second half was a far livelier affair. Danny Tiato showing just what a fine player he is with this long-range effort. But it was the Zebras who came closest to scoring. Della Rocca from the set piece into the side netting, but so close to the opening goal. Then it was Danny Tiato's turn. A fine free kick, just tipped over the bar by the goalkeeper. The turning point in the match came in the second half, when the Melbourne Zebras had a player sent off. A high challenge here by Jack Andrilidakis caused the wrath not only of the referee, but also of the Melbourne Knights players. Jurgen Anus had no choice but to send the young player off. Finally now, with the numerical advantage, the Melbourne Knights really started to turn it on. It wasn't long before the opening goal came. Bransford Benini with a poor clearance, and Danny Tiato sneaking in behind the defence to finally open the scoring.
The second wasn't too far away at all either, and Joe Spiteri took on all the defenders and beat them for the Melbourne Knights' second goal. A late flurry from the Knights, but they did show in the last 15 minutes of the game what a fine side they can be. Final score, the Knights 2, Zebras 0. In the second semi-final, it was the youth of South Melbourne against the Morwell Falcons, but Vaughan Coveney stole the show early on with a magnificent solo effort. Coveney, of course, signed from Wollongong City, where he topped the goal-scoring charts there, scoring 12 goals in the NSL last season. Morwell had their moments in front of goal as well, in a far livelier match. But even when Anastasiadis was beaten, there were other defenders on the goal line to help the side. Mike Valkanis also had an opportunity to increase the lead, but his header went straight at the goalkeeper. Still, Vaughan Coveney proved to be a real handful for the Morwell defenders, again showing what a pacey player he is. All the supporters thought he'd scored the second, but only Vaughan Coveney knew the truth as the ball hit the side netting. The second was always not too far away though, and finally it came. Con Glaxis with a fine cross on the right-hand side, and youth team player Tanzel Beza with his first senior goal for South Melbourne. Paul Trimboli set up Steve Panopoulos for the third. He outjumped the defence and the outstretched leg of John Waddell during the celebration to make it 3-0 for South Melbourne. Morwell, to their credit, kept pushing at the South Melbourne side and finally were rewarded late on in the second half. Marcus Sturviopoulos forced his way into the penalty area and was brought down by Mike Valkanis for an extremely dubious penalty. John Waddell, the veteran, didn't worry about that though, and he calmly just slotted away this penalty to make it 3-1. Morwell, of course, are still awaiting the return of star striker Warren Spink and Brian Bothwell also, who's playing overseas. Final score here was South Melbourne 3, Morwell Falcons 1.
So there you have it, high drama on Wednesday night in the two semi-finals. The Melbourne Knights getting home over the Melbourne Zebras 2-0 and South Melbourne continuing their run to the final, 3-1 winners over the Morwell Falcons. And I guess the interesting one there, Vaughan Coveney, Frank Magrelis is the name. 2 goals in 2 games for South Melbourne so far in the Dockerty Cup. He may well be the buy of the season.
Yeah, he's on track for that, Greg. The goal against Preston last week was quality. The goal on Wednesday night, similar goal in that he's taken the ball from sort of midway inside South Melbourne's attacking half, gone all the way, 3 players and past the goalkeeper. It's a quality goal, Greg. He definitely a great introduction to the South Melbourne team.
Paulie, the Melbourne Knights, you saw a lot of it last season. They won it all, didn't they? They won the Dockerty Cup, the minor premiership, the NSL Cup and finally the grand final. Mm-hmm. They're back into the Dockerty Cup final again, once again this year, but a couple of weaknesses, of course. No Mark Viduka, no Steve Horvath. How far, Paulie Williams, voice of authority, can they go?
Can they go? Well, I think they'll struggle a bit without Viduka. He was not only a great player, but he had a big impact on the team as a personality. And in the game against the Zebras on Wednesday evening, they really did look fairly average for most of the game until a couple of late goals once the Melbourne Zebras player got sent off. It took them until the opposition were down to 10 men before they really started to take off. So with that in mind, I think they may struggle. OK, so that's the matchup for the Diabetes Australia Dockerty Cup Final 1995. Clash of the Titans at Olympic Park between the Melbourne Knights and South Melbourne. Let's go to all the match action. Join Voice of Authority and me at the big game.